evening and a very warm welcome to State of Business on Art Television. I'm Heshain Ali and let's have a look at the headlines first. SLPP secures a landslide victory from the election. Country's GDP growth for the first quarter stumbles. News in detail. The counting of votes in the 2020 general election is being continued under tight security around the country despite the bad weather conditions. By 6 p.m. this evening, according to the results released, so far Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was leading the general elections 2020. Making a change to the traditional way of counting the marked ballot papers on the same day, the National Election Commission had decided to commence counting votes next day, and accordingly the counting process started this morning. Chairman of the National Election Commission Mahinda Deshapriya said that the voter turnout of 71% was a satisfactory number. He also highlighted that in some areas like the Hambantota and Batiklo districts, it was 76%. Polling was carried out at 12,985 polling centres island-wide with 16,263,885 voters eligible to cast their ballots. The results released so far prove that Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna will record a landslide victory at the parliamentary elections 2020. The main opposition party, United National Party, has been brought to the 4th place at most number of electorates. Samagijana Balawegya, led by former opposition leader Sajid Premadasa, has been secured the 2nd place, but the gap between the winner was expressively huge. Jatika Jana Balawegya, led by leftist party Janata Vimukti Peramuna, was capable of securing the 3rd place at most number of electorates. However, the Lanka Tamil Arasakatchu, led by Tamil National Alliance, has secured an early lead in the north based on results of the general elections released this afternoon. Lanka Tamil Arasakatchu secured 7,634 votes in the Jaffna polling division in the Jaffna district, while the EPDP, led by Douglas Devananda, secured 5,545 votes and AITC secured 4,642 votes, leaving beside all other known political parties in the south. Sri Lanka's GDP growth rate for the first quarter of 2020 has been estimated as 1.6% of negative growth rate when compared to the 3.7% of positive growth recorded in the first quarter of 2019. The Department of Census and Statistics made this revelation releasing its preliminary national accounts estimates. The Department of Census and Statistics, releasing a preliminary national accounts estimates, said that the gross domestic product for Sri Lanka for the first quarter of 2020 at constant price has declined down to 2,292,589 million rupees from 2,330,053 million rupees recorded in the first quarter of 2019. However, the gross domestic production for Sri Lanka for the first quarter of 2020 at current price has increased marginally up to 3,845,900 million rupees from 3,773,551 million rupees recorded in the first quarter of 2019, registering 1.9% of change in the current price GDP estimate. The 4 major components of the economy, agriculture, industry, services and taxes less subsidies on products, have contributed their share to the GDP at current prices by 7.3%, 28.4%, 58.3% and 6% respectively in the first quarter of this year. The report also says that the COVID-19 pandemic at global level in the first quarter of 2020 deeply impacted the industrial sector, recording the lowest growth rate ever reported for the first quarter series since 2010. According to the official data, construction sector alone has contracted by 16%. The report further adds that the downfall of export demand of European markets, especially including the United States, has had a considerable impact on the government-related industries. Bank of Ceylon Chairman Kanchana Ratwata states that Bank of Ceylon intends to allocate a total of 50 billion rupee loan stimulus to affected businesses in order to fast-track the post-COVID-19 economic revival in Sri Lanka. Thus, BOC's Chief Ratwata made these observations addressing the BOC's 81st anniversary celebrations.
Despite all the grey clouds, let me very proudly state that year on year, we as a bank that accounts for 40% of the foreign remittances have maintained the level up to the end of July. Except for the month of June, where there was a small deviation, every other month, despite the COVID situation, foreign remittances have flowed to the bank as usual. So do we have reason to despair? Not to despair, but to address situations as we go forward. I would like to call upon the employees, the staff, and the senior management of BOC that despite the challenges that we are facing, we need to address the concern of the government of Sri Lanka. The main focus of the government is to ensure that there is adequate circulation of money. අපේ වැඩබලන සාමාන්‍ය අධිකාරිතුමා කිව්වා වගේ බිලියන 15.5ක් මහ බැංකුවේ අනුමැතිය සඳහා යවලා තියෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව තව බිලියන 12ක් 13ක් අපිට ඉල්ලුම්පත් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. And very silently let me say our target is a 50 billion with the cooperation of everybody in the bank.
Stay tuned for more news right after this commercial break. Welcome back after the break. Founder Chairman of National Child Protection Authority, Professor Harendra Silva, says that an overall attitudinal change of the society is needed to create a positive change in the society and to curb all means of abuse. He made these observations joining in our TV's weekly program, Our Talk Walk, aired last evening.
There should be a change in behavior, a change in attitudes, changing sort of practical ways of doing things and behavior is what can bring about a change. Also, it's important to realize, thinking of child abuse, is that the mindset change is mainly during childhood and youth. When you are an older person, it's very difficult to change their mindset because they have already formed their preconceptions and so on and so forth, that their own notions are already in them, and it's very difficult. So I think you have to start from childhood, not necessarily preventing child abuse or abuse of children, but also giving them the correct ideas.
Speaking further, Professor Harendra Silva added some key solutions to control the rising number of child abuse cases in the country.
I think in terms of child abuse, the most important thing is the prevention of child abuse. And in the prevention process, it is the knowledge base which is important, giving knowledge to everybody across the board, not only children, not only parents, but also people across the board, and also the fact that we need to give skills to people to how to avoid being abused, how to avoid getting angry and abusing children. Those are skills that you need to do. And the last thing is the legislation. Once the child is abused, I think the damage is done. But the legislation is important in a way to make sure that those people are not there, won't continue to do that, but to instill some fear. But still, people do that because if the law is not effective and if there is impunity in the country, right, then it's going to be broken.
Sri Lanka Chamber of Small and Medium Industries calls the government to establish a national level database of the SMEs in the country, since the non-availability of such an all-inclusive database has become a barricade for SMEs to develop further.
But what we want is the government to take steps to continue the good things that they have started. It should not be a short-term measure. It should not be temporary measure. Even after Corona pandemic is over, we want the government to maintain the momentum that they have started in supporting this segment and industries. Some of these short-term measures we would like government to establish as sustainable model. Say, for example, this interministerial task force, if they can continue, that's good. But at the same time, I must highlight, the President has already identified in his manifesto this lapse where we don't have one entity to cater to this segment, and he has even promised to establish an institution to do that, and we urge the President to please take steps to establish that institute, and we as a chamber will give our fullest cooperation to run the show.
Speaking further advice of Sri Lanka Chamber of Small and Medium Industries, Chaminda Kumarasiri also urged the government to solidify the short-term measures introduced for the country's SME sector amid COVID-19 crisis in order to retain the momentum of the sector's development.
Then, one other good thing that the government came up during the last couple of months is introducing this credit guarantee scheme for those who cannot afford a collateral when they source funds. What we feel is, while appreciating the efforts, this has to be one of the major actions going forward in a big scale, because we have a large number of entrepreneurs across the country who are unable to source funding because of this barrier. So if the government can have a large-scale mechanism to cater, that will be a winning mechanism. And one final thought, we have 20 million plus population in this country, and as most of us believe, fostering entrepreneurship is the solution for many of these problems. But unfortunately, if I look at the numbers, we have little less than 3% entrepreneurs in this country. But there are big number who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs. So we need the support of all the like-minded parties to bring that into a reality.
Stay tuned for stock updates. Welcome back after the break. The trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a positive note today. The All Share Price Index gained 30.41 points to close at 5,176.85, and the S&P SL20 gained 9.87 points to close at 2,219.54. The turnover was 889 million rupees and over 44 million shares were traded. Up next are Forex rates. And that's all news for today. See you tomorrow with State of Business at the usual time. Until then, take care and good night.